We often treat dial color as a simple aesthetic choice, something that just needs to look good. But I believe it's more complex than that. In fact, one of the most common mistakes I see collectors making is failing to account for practicality, versatility, and how a color will fit into the rest of their collection. It's the difference between a watch that never leaves your wrist and a several $1,000 mistake gathering dust in a box. Today, I'm ranking every major dial color, from worst to best, based on a mix of statistics, a bit of logic, and my own experience as a collector, featuring some of the most beautiful examples of each along the way. Let's start at the bottom, with the colors that represent the biggest aesthetic gambles a collector can make. Yellow and orange are likely the loudest choices you can choose in a watch. They go with almost nothing and offer very little variation in hue. I challenge anyone watching this to find me a yellow dial that isn't just a flat SpongeBob yellow. Anything with sunburst or reflectiveness is better off just being gold. I had a hard time finding any watches that weren't gimmicky or arguably ugly here, and that makes sense, since statistically, both yellow and orange make up less than 1% of references on the market, combined. These would be some of the worst choices for a small collection because they rarely work outside of a casual setting. While I acknowledge that they can be done well in some circumstances, like the Grand Seiko SPGA 503, even that is still mockingly known as the yellow snow. Both yellow and orange belong in the E tier. They're one-dimensional and can work, but are almost never the best option. Gemset dials are the absolute worst choice in all of horology. They're the ultimate validation of the phrase, money doesn't buy taste. It's nearly impossible to create one of these dials without it looking tacky. You're either trying to look like the king or some sort of rapper with an iced out AP. These are the most flashy you could possibly get, look ugly usually, and have horrible legibility. They exist merely as a wealth flex. Easy F tier. I contemplated combining these with gem sets, as rainbow dials are most often various colored gemstones. And even when they aren't, they rarely look good. They're busy and the definition of a gimmick. Based on aesthetics and the sheer impracticality of owning a rainbow colored dial, this can't be anything higher than F tier. I really want to like red. It has a slightly larger market than yellow and orange, and a much wider range, from bright red to maroon and burgundy. You even see some interesting stone dials, like red agate or jasper. Where it falls short is versatility. In any setting that requires a well-constructed outfit, red is difficult to pull off. It stands out too much, and rarely meshes with formal wear. However, I can see that there are some absolutely beautiful examples, like the Fume patterns on Anne Ordain's Model 1 Plum, and Moser's Pioneer in red. It wouldn't be the best singular watch to own, but it can work well in a larger collection. D tier. Purple is similar to red, but with more variance and intrigue. It has incredibly high highs, but low lows as well. It works better on the feminine side of choices, but it's still fairly unisex. Although it is quite loud, I think purple handles it better. It looks great in crazy textured dials or guilloche, and is one of the only unnatural colors that can be achieved through traditional heat bluing. The de Bethune Purple Rain is a perfect high horology example of this, and Christopher Ward's The 12 and Bel Canto make great usage of purple too. D tier. Pink is a color I've come to respect a lot more recently. If you ignore the hot pink palette on watches like the Oris Miss Piggy, it actually has a great range, especially on account of it being so close to white, which of course is extremely versatile. The most famous example of this is probably Grand Seiko's Shun Bun, that looks extremely light in most circumstances. Another virtue of pink is that, for better or worse, it's extremely popular in the feminine watch space. It's estimated that around 35% of watch buyers are women, so having a color that is strongly appealing to that population can't be ignored. It also gets extra points for often being the color of mother of pearl. Fear's Brunswick Orchid is one of my favorite examples of this. That being said, pink is still a tint of red, and is generally a niche pick for a majority of collectors. C tier. If you find this analytical approach to collecting more useful than the typical hype-focused reviewers, consider subscribing. I post a new video every week exploring the deeper philosophy and statistics behind the hobby. We just passed 1,000 subscribers, and I'd love to have you for the next 1,000. Thanks. Those were the aesthetic gambles, the ones that you probably want to have an established collection before considering. Next, I want to cover the more enthusiast colors. These don't have mass appeal, but they serve a specific, important role. Copper and brass are everything that orange and yellow wanted to be. Instead of feeling artificially bright, they feel natural and classic. These are used most often by independents and microbrands, especially German brands, like Zinn with the 356 SA Pilot 2, or a number of Habring 2's pieces, like the Doppel 38 or Chrono Felix. This is a true watchmaker's color, because it stays true to the base materials of the watch. Most dials and movements are brass at their core, and this metallic base allows textures like hand frosting and guilloche to shine. They represent craftsmanship over flashiness. They're not very common, but for an enthusiast, it's a strong C tier. Salmon is perhaps the most specific color on this list. It serves a similar purpose to copper and is often interchangeably titled either depending on the reflectivity. There are some absolute classics in this colorway, most notably the Patek Calatrava. It's the unofficial color of the perpetual calendar as well. Brands like Breitling, Patek, Glashütte Original, Longa, and Longines all come to mind as heritage brands that have made this a heritage colorway. Salmon is very underrated, but also quite specific to dressy attire. C tier. Most people aren't seeking out brown, but it's more broad than you'd think. Of course, in many circumstances, it's just flat out unappealing, but there are also many variations that genuinely look great. It looks best in a vintage context, as a weathered or patinaed look. In fact, brown is the only color collectors pay extra for when it's created by accident, the tropical dial. It's a color with historical relevance, like with the Zenith Revival and original A385, or various Pateks. It's an acquired taste, but one with genuine merit. C tier. I could have grouped these with brown, but tan and beige watches differentiate themselves by being significantly more attractive. They also invoke the feeling of age and patina, especially with old loom and modern faux tina, but are much easier to pair with leather straps in most clothing. The Grand Seiko SVGM 221 is an obvious standout here, but Christopher Ward's Dune A65 is also a great usage of the colorway. Age Rolexes like the Explorer 2 reference 16550 can look really nice too. A light cream dial feels more classic and elevated than a darker brown one to me. B tier. Gray is definitely the most boring and neutral color in this entire lineup. It's usually not going to wow anyone, but you'll probably never hate it either. It can represent the bare metal of a design, like with the Bulgari Octo Finissimo, but most often it's a plain option that plays it safe. It can shine though, especially with fume style dials such as the newer Patek Calatrava in charcoal gray, again the Anordain Model 1, or the Menes de Vito Degrade dial. Even if it's not the most popular or daring pick, it's an unoffensive and versatile workhorse. B tier. If gray is the most boring, skeleton dials are the most contentious, if you could even call them a colorway. Unexpectedly, skeleton dials were actually the second most frequent dial style at Watches and Wonders this year, perhaps the most as far as references released in 2025 is concerned, which is quite astonishing. It's another enthusiast and watchmaker style popular among microbrands, but its respectability depends heavily on the watch and brand. On one hand, you have beautifully finished and complex open dials from brands like Arm & Strom, with their distinct triple bridge design. And on the other, the busy and often gaudy designs from brands like Hublot. And then you have low-end brands, with inexpensive, non-finished movements doing these too, with nothing to show off, giving the style a bad name. It lacks versatility, and always runs the risk of looking too informal. Although there are some examples like the Breguet 7057 that maintain at least a little bit of classy vibes. There's some amazing designs and mechanical intrigue here that couldn't be achieved with any other style, but there's also a lot of slop. B tier. Unlike brass or copper, gold is unashamedly associated with wealth and flashiness. Its historical status brings it up way higher on the list than similar colors like yellow or orange. It's a total classic. Almost every iconic dress watch, from the Rolex President to the Vacheron 222, has a gold version. If you have the confidence, gold actually goes with quite a lot too. Although it's typically fancy, it can even lean casual because of how popular it is, like with Seiko's Pogue for example. It has a decent range if you consider rose gold and champagne tones, which puts gold into the top 5 colorways on the market for Chrono 24 at least. For the historical importance, popularity, and fairly good versatility, it's a B tier. From here on, every option is a heavy hitter. a great and popular choice with thousands of models to choose from, and the versatility to be worn in almost any situation. Black is far and away the most produced, purchased, and standard colorway. It accounts for roughly 40% of some dealers' sales, and over a fourth of all models on Chrono24. Practically every iconic watch has a black dial, from pretty much all Rolex models, dive watches as a whole, the Speedmaster, to Casios. It's the most professional dial color choice you can make. Serious occasions, casual, and everything in between. It's the go anywhere, do anything of colorways. There's a reason almost every collector has a black watch as one of their first. The only downside is that it's one note. Almost every black dial looks the same, and I think the only variety it has is on account of the extreme popularity of it. Black absorbs all light and can look flat as a result. Outliers like the newly announced Grand Seiko SLGB003, Aquaterra Black Lacquer, or the crazy Moser Vantablack exist, but most black dials look very similar. It's an amazingly practical and competent choice, but it lacks the intrigue of color. A tier. White was the standard in the pocket watch era, and many iconic watches throughout history have been white, like the Cartier Tank. Today though, it seems to have been relegated to the alternative to black, through the white variation. The white Speedmaster, Hamilton Khaki or Murph, and Tudor's Black Bay Pro are all examples of this. This is reflected through its recent lack of popularity too, at around 4th of all the colors, at around 10% of the market. It has a legitimate claim to being the most classic watch color though, just as black does. Because white is the lightest of all colors, it displays texture better than anything else, seen famously in watches like Grand Seiko's Snowflake or the Citizen. Enamel and porcelain dials are popular choices for white too, which are beautiful as well, like the Creedor Etchy 2. White is just about as practical as black, with a cleaner aesthetic at times as well. It only does one thing, but it does it perfectly, and has a place in any collection. A tier. According to Chrono24, green was the fastest growing color on the market in 2025, and I've seen similar results in my analysis as well. It has the advantage of having a massive variety of hues, from mint, bright green, olive to forest, and so many more. The range of a watch like Breitlink's Premier B09 Pistachio and Glasuta Original's Panamatic Lunar in Forest Green being in the same category opens up a ton of opportunities for what someone might want. And because of that, it can be worn in almost any occasion reasonably, if you can find the right watch. Green is also open to many beautifully designed and textured dials. Of course, Grand Seiko is always worth a mention, but the Awake Frosted Leaf and Glasuta 60s stand out to me as amazing examples of what the color is capable of achieving. But that's the thing, you need to find the right color, which can be difficult because green doesn't have the popularity of black or blue. And the options you do have are often quite aggressive. This will get better over time, but at the moment, I think it belongs in A tier. Finally, we get to what I consider to be the best of the colors. The two colors that have the fewest downsides, while still being beautiful to look at. Statistically, blue is the world's favorite color. Roughly a third of all people consider it to be their favorite, and this extends into watches too. It ranks consistently in the top 3 of popularity, often around 15% of sales, the highest of any non-grayscale color. And it still seems to be growing in popularity, as at this year's Watches and Wonders, nearly a fourth of all the watches revealed were blue. Blue can be as dark as black or as light as white, and looks great in either case. It can be ultra saturated without being overpowering. Some of the most iconic watches ever, the Patek Nautilus, AP Royal Oak, and Omega Seamaster, all prove that blue is a permanent staple. It handles texture extremely well, has some of the best stone dials like Lapis and Aventurine, and overall, just always works. When you think of a beautiful watch, often it's a deep blue, like the Vacheron Overseas or a variety of Grand Seikos, as well as the Creedor Etchy 2 in blue. Wear it formally, casually, with any texture or hue, it'll probably still look solid. It really is just the ultimate dial color. S tier. And finally, we reach the biggest sleeper hit on this list. Typically, you imagine the most popular dial colors being black, white, and blue, but silver is consistently in the top as well. Silver is typically the second or third most popular dial color in total models, market volume, and selling performance, beating out white pretty much every time. Historically, it is the classic dress watch dial color. Look through any brand's vintage models, you'll see silver everywhere, especially with Omega Seamasters and Longines. Silver does everything white does, but better. It serves as a bridge between black and white, leaning flashy but remaining neutral and versatile. You have sunburst, linen, guilloche, meteorite, and more niche textures like Grand Seiko's white birch, with reflective quality that white simply can't match. Paired with the steel case, it feels raw and cohesive, extending the aesthetic of the case to the dial. Legibility can become a concern, but competent usage of hand polishing by the manufacturer alleviates this too. Silver is an immensely classic, strong, attractive choice overall, and it remains my personal favorite. I have to actively fight my instincts to only buy silver dials. S tier. Followers of the channel will know that I'm a big fan of chronographs, especially vintage designs. Typically on older models, the colors are rather restrained. The Horus Skipper Reference 15640 is an exception to this though, and a great case study on how different colors on a dial can look great, if they're used to their strengths. Intended for sailboat racing, the Skipper is a 15-minute chronograph featuring a blue sunburst dial and two sub-dials in teal and tricolor teal, orange, and green. On paper, it sounds like a mess. But the blue, teal, and green work synergistically, while the orange acts as a perfect complementary accent to the majority cool colors. Unfortunately, this watch is exceptionally rare, and only a few dozen were ever made. There were other variations following this one, but none would match this colorway until 2023, when Tag Heuer released their own version, and an improved one at that. Now, the watch features 3 subdials, and a date at 6 o'clock, mirroring the movements used in earlier variations with Octavia cases from the late 70s and early 80s. The colorway is largely the same, if a bit over-detailed now. Regardless, I'm happy to see this design reinstated in a standard production run, especially with a 12-hour totalizer, a feature I feel I couldn't live without in a chrono. Even though I have my criticisms of orange, it can work amazingly as an accent. The love and success of this design really displays how every color has a place in a dial. It's just important how it's utilized. Dial color is one of the most important aspects to consider when buying a watch. Yet, too many new collectors buy based on a moment of intrigue rather than long-term wearability. You should prioritize versatility for your first few pieces to ensure they actually get wrist time, and only branch out as your collection grows, exploring niche colors once you have your bases covered. But of course, you should always buy what you like, and this list is just my rough opinion. The discussion around colors is extremely individual and up to personal taste, even if there are some general guidelines newcomers should follow. What's your favorite dial or dial color? Did I rank it really low? Let me know in the comments. And let me know what your thoughts are on this format. I'm trying something new and would like feedback on it. And if you enjoyed the statistics aspect of this video, watch my recent video on limited editions, and how they're a lot more common than you may think. Thank you for taking the time to watch.